الجمال والسناء والبهاء في رباك في رباك، والحياة والنجاة والهناء والرجاء في هواك في هواك. هل أراك هل أراك سالما وناما وغانما مكرما، سالما وناما وغانما مكرما. هل أراك في علاك تبلغ السما تبلغ موطني موطني، الشباب لن يكل همه أن يستقل أو يميل أو يميل. نستقي من الردى ولن نكون للعدا كالعبيد كالعبيد. لا نريد لا نريد ذلنا المؤبدا وعيشنا المنكدا، ذلنا المؤبدا وعيشنا المنكدا. لا نريد موطني المسام واليرى للكلام والنزاع رمزنا رمزنا، نسلنا وعهدنا وواجب من الوفاء يمسنا يمسنا. غاية تشرف وراية ترفرف، غاية تشرف وراية ترفرف. يا هناك في علاك طاهرا عيدا طاهرا عيدا. موطني في علا تبلغ السماء تبلغ السماء أمضي أمضي.
I think you can stop it. Life, you can stop it. And then we go according to the program. Good morning in the west coast of the US. Good evening, good afternoon in the east coast. Good evening in the middle of Europe and other places of the world. And good evening in Palestine, Lebanon, and the rest of that area. That is not the east. Am I on? Liz, am I on?
Yes.
Good evening.
Yeah,
Oh,
we can hear you loud and clear.
I didn't hear from you. Okay. So today our panel will be focusing on from partition to solidarity. How do we understand now, 29th of November, the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, as we say with Palestine, to make it fit on the flyer. But before we do anything, we are going to acknowledge our connection to this land here on where we meet. Laith, would you please do the one from San Francisco State University, if you don't mind?
Hello, everyone. The campuses of San Francisco State University on the San Francisco Peninsula and North Bay are located within the occupied territories of the Ramey Tush Ohlone and the coastal Miwok, who, along with the Southern Como, are organized as the Federated Groton Ranch.
And sorry. I would also add that we are, I'm on the East Coast, on the Lenape People's Nation at this point, and I come from Palestine, from another indigenous land, which is also being colonized by settler colonial project of Zionism. And as such, and as somebody who supports justice everywhere, we support the indigenous people's rights as the people's rights everywhere, including here in Turtle Island, and land back for everybody. We turn it over to Lice now to express gratitude.
Hi, so we wanted to share that this open classroom is sponsored by the Teaching Palestine Pedagogical Praxis and the Indivisibility of Justice, and co-sponsored by Westchester for Palestine, the Palestine Arab and Muslim Caucus of the California Faculty Association, Metro Vancouver United for Palestine, the Coalition for Action in Higher Education, Global Smooth Flotilla, Smooth Convoy Maghreb, Tunisian Joint Committee for Palestine.
And the Palestine Arab Muslim Caucus of the California Faculty Association, which is my union caucus, and used to be Lice before Lice moved on to their graduate studies. Huh?
Oh, I think there's just an echo.
Okay. And I also want to deeply thank Laith Ghulum, who is a graduate student at University of Minnesota now, was a graduate student at San Francisco State, and now is all ABD, all but dissertation. Congratulations, Laith, with everything else that you're doing and the union struggles at all universities and the harassment in Minnesota that you are all standing very strong for. I also want to thank Teaching Palestine intern, Lina Asiri, who comes to us from south of Lebanon, finished her education at the American University of Beirut, and now is in charge of media and social media and things of this sort. And Anais Amer, who comes to us from Amman, Palestine, Amman, and she is now currently a graduate student, a PhD in the CUNY Graduate Center and her advisor is Mark Lamont Hill, and she is in charge of publications, translations, other issues. They have been extremely helpful, and we have other interns who have not been involved in this one, but they are the lifeline of this project, because we don't get any funded by the university that has decided to punish us to cut our lifeline. So we stopped doing what we're doing, and we said no, we are going to continue doing what we are doing. We're very proud, and we are very honored. Can somebody who has the mic on, please just turn it off while we're talking, and then we'll come back. And we are very honored to be having these continued open classrooms, that we do them all the time. We bring scholars, activists, academics, people from the community, and we believe that everybody who comes here is a public intellectual, actually an organic intellectual, very much involved, and is as much involved in the production of knowledge for justice as people who have degrees, who are teaching in universities, and we all together are involved in the process of the production of justice. We open the classrooms to everybody because we believe that knowledge should not be the property of people who pay for it. It should be open for everybody. It should not be paid for anyway for anybody. And my classes, the classes that will be attended today, three classes from San Francisco State University, which will be concluded next week, is the last week of classes. The first class is Arab and Arab American feminisms. The second class is colonialism, imperialism, and resistance, third world movements then and now. And the third class is Palestine, ethnic studies perspective. Very good classes. The students are very active, very mobilized, very engaged. We had a very big discussion last night about November 29th, and they are extremely excited about this. We are today is it not the November 29th? Today is December 3rd. We were actually going to do it on the day of November 29th, but as you know, November 29th was 28th was a celebration of a genocidal holiday in the United States, so-called Thanksgiving. We say Thanksgiving, which creates a myth about what has happened when the settlers came to the U.S. And as we, those people who are students of Palestine, know a lot about how narratives go and how invented narratives go to cover the truth, which will be one big focus of our topic. This is something that the indigenous people and their allies actually go at the sunrise Thursday morning to the various locations, and they conduct a ceremony of mourning. And so this is we join them, we stand with them, and we insist on land back and in support of their struggle and support of all the struggles for justice around the world. So today we hold it, and we hold this to ask these several questions. We will go over them. It's really important. This year in particular, there was a big call from so many Palestinian sources from Palestine, from Gaza, from the West Bank, from the 48 areas, from refugee camps, from various everywhere, conferences, coalitions, people coming together. There was a huge emphasis on the need for, in November in particular. This is the last occasion in November to commemorate November 2nd Balfour Declaration, which is connected, and I'm sure some of our guests will allude to that. November 2nd, which was the declaration given by the Foreign Secretary of Britain to the head of the Zionist movement, telling them that the Zionist movement can establish a homeland for the Jews in Palestine, which is basically the Zionist project, because at the time Palestine was actually under colonial rule. It is said the mandate, but it was not mandated by Palestinians. Nobody was asked them. It was some United Nations countries met, which is also a topic of our discussion. So for us, November 2nd, Balfour Declaration. The second occasion was November 10th, which was the 50th anniversary of the United Nations resolution, Zionism is Racism, which came about because of all these countries around the world voted for it and made it happen. And it was abrogated in December 16, 1991 by the Reagan administration as a ransom for Israel's participating in the Madrid talks informal talks, because the PLO was not allowed to come. They only had Palestinians come in, and it didn't lead to anything. But that was the price for agreeing to this. And then November 29th, which was originally the partition, on November 29th, 1981. And then in 1977 was declared the International Day of Solidarity, which I don't want to talk about the details, because our speakers, our panelists, our comrades are here to discuss that. But we do open classrooms because we want students to learn and to engage with each other. We want to commemorate occasions, so we have a chance all the time to remember history, learn what is the history that has happened and what is the history that invented and created and made. We want to connect elders with young people. We call the living archives, with younger people and students, to also learn about the histories that they've gone through. A lot of history is being erased as we go. And so this is really, really important everywhere. It's not just in Palestine, because teaching Palestine is a comparative project. We also want to place the marginalized and the colonized at the center of analysis, not the way the mainstream media, for example, completely disappears the people who are under the gun and only covers the voices of the colonizers, the voices of the European countries, the voices of some media bandits who actually are looking at from and most likely, most occasionally, are supportive of Israel and its policies. And we also want to elevate and echo the voices of these rising, amazing people all over the world who are organizing and expressing solidarity much, much, much louder than we ever heard before. And we have some of the heroes. I mean, everyone here is a hero, actually, has, by the real word meaning of the word. It's not just something we spare. So we are very happy to do that. The last thing I would say is that every time we do an event of this sort, of open classroom, we always stop to for a moment of silence to honor all the martyrs who have fallen in Gaza, in the streets of the United States, in South Africa and in Lebanon, in Puerto Rico and Vietnam, in Cuba, Kashmir. Today, there is very, very bad news coming us from Malaysia, Indonesia, and other parts of the world. We also remember them, think of them. We remember all the martyrs who have fallen a long time ago and those who have fallen recently. They have fallen for our people's will, and so many of us will be continuing to struggle in there, inspired by their lives day in and day out. I want to also say that finally, that announcement for our people who are joining us, it is there will be questions and answers after our panelists present what they want to say, and then converse with each other. Hopefully we'll be able we have a very rigid timeline. Hopefully we'll be able to stick to it, because everybody is very excited about what we're going to talk. And we will be on we are both on YouTube and Facebook right now, live. And they will stay the for learning reasons, for all sorts of and we will wait also for us when spring semester starts at the end of January. We have also a very also exciting menu for all the classes, which are Islamophobia, comparative border studies, Palestine and Mexico, and what was the last one? Third one, Laysat, I forgot. Do you remember which was the last? Islamophobia, comparative border studies. We had one more. Maybe I didn't write it, so I'm forgetting. I'll remember it as we go along. And now let's see, without further ado, I am very honored, really, to present and welcome our amazing guests. I really don't even believe how we were able in such a short time to get such incredible people with such rich experiences in life that we won't be able to read them all. So we have decided before, rather than spend a chopped bio about each one of them, and we will have them say some things they would like to say about their experience, their lives, that's relevant to this topic. But also we will paste their all their bios, whatever they gave us online. You will have it, you will read it, you can all check it out, and also whenever we hear more information we will add to it. We will, because it's on our website, so we can keep adding to it. So please, like, look it up, check it out if you have any questions. And then I'm going to welcome our speakers and see. And I don't think anybody has already decided who's going to go next, so I am not sure that but while I read the question, can you decide who would like to go next? And Lace, maybe you can remove the poster and put, yeah, uh, everybody's beautiful forces here. So I'll put the headphones in a minute. So the first question, let me read the first question while you think about who would like to go first, who would like to go second. Okay. So let me repeat the names of the speakers alphabetically. Speaking the first, the first, in alphabetical order, is a long time political prisoner, Mumia Abu Jamal, who joined us from Pennsylvania. You know, you may not know that he is not, Mumia doesn't own his time. So we talked for an hour yesterday trying to figure out how to do it, and then he is allowed to call, but he doesn't know when he's able to call, and if he's able to stay on the phone. So what he did, two things: when he recorded, and then he said whenever he comes, he'll go anytime, anybody speaking, he will go and speak. And if we are able to get him longer, because we are allowed half an hour call, but they don't allow us that all the time. So he and his lawyer, and there is a big demonstration in support of him. Actually, for a few days people have been marching to the prison in the snow in order to protest his conditions, demand an end of the death penalties on death penalty row, and drop all the charges. So he can be, actually the death penalty has been dropped, but to drop all the charges so he can get out and get treated. He needs an eye surgery because he can only see with one eye, and he's a writer. He's actually finishing his PhD, so he needs to read and he needs to write. So finally they agreed with the left eye to have the cornea because of pressure of French doctors, and so he needs the right eye. So people are actually in the snow outside of his prison protesting to support so many. So we want to give a shout out from here for him to. So anyway, if he jumps in, he will be here. The second person is going again by alphabetical, Dr. Sui Ang, who has been, I don't know, from like 17 years old, involving in everything in Palestine. I'm not going to start saying it because there is a lot, and what she gave us is very, very, very little. And I was honored to meet Dr. Sui back in the 80s, and also Richard Falk, by the way, in the 80s, when I was a young chickadee organizer of the Palestine Solidarity Committee. But I met Richard more when we used to invite him to come to speak at the 777 UN Plaza, United Nations Church Center, and I was with the Palestine Solidarity Committee. And so still a giant and amazing person who's a professor of law, human rights, and everything on the face of the earth. And Dr. Sui, and actually, I met somebody the other day in Washington who told me, she operated on my leg during Sabra and Shatila. It's a child whose family all was martyred, and then only he and his brother. And I know you know who I'm talking about. And then, of course, we're having my sisters, Huwaida Arraf, who is we're struggling in every single arena, from Palestinian Feminist Elective to her own role of co-founding International Solidarity Movement, to the flotilla, everywhere. You're always everywhere, and I see her on TV getting her arrested and so on. So she's been all around. And then we also have two people, Thiango Avila and Wael Nawar, who are both. Thiango is from Brazil. Hello, and obrigado. and Wael Nawar is from Tunisia, joining us from Tunisia, and both are strong, strong activists, activists and organizer, as youth, as college students, as organizers around in so many causes, from environmental justice to Palestinian rights to rights of the people, students, labor, in all sources. So we are a microcosm here of people who are defending all the rights of the world. And we are on the right side, and we're the 99%. So if we're the 99%, we do not rule, the 1% rules, but this is a very strong power that is coming and that's going to take the world by storm. So we're very happy and we are very proud to be able to get you. And we are so honored that everybody came. And, you know, when we wanted to host Layla Khalid and they denied us, they said, "Is she getting paid?" We all started laughing because we never ever, like, people will be insulted if we say to them, "We want to pay you." But what? Don't even say that. So, like, we have different traditions and different ways of working with each other. Anyway, did anybody decide who would like to go speak first? Please, somebody volunteer, jump in. 3 minutes only.
I'll be very glad to hear from our other guests here. I'm honored to be with all of you.
All right, okay. Why don't we start with Richard? Would you start? You have to turn on the mic, please. Mike. Still no sound, Richard.
Me now?
Yes.
No. Well, I wanted to say that this is an important initiative that I'm very proud to be part of. And I think we owe Rahab a very strong expression of gratitude for initiating such an event. I movement, which made me sensitive to the violence of colonial criminality in seeking to rely on violence to compensate for their lack of legitimacy. And that, in my view, underlies the whole experience with the Zionist project and its more advanced expressions. It is compensating for the loss of legitimacy by the escalation of cruelty and genocidal violence. And that's a terrible precedent for the world and for all peoples that are under various forms of oppression. I became engaged with Palestine, which was a difficult thing to do in a conservative academic atmosphere of the sort that existed at Princeton University, where any kind of criticism of Israel was viewed as crossing a red line. And it intimidated me to some extent until my friendship with Edward Said had a big impact, because he teased me for being involved in these other justice driven issues such as Vietnam and South Africa, and having at the same time not been active with regard to Palestine. So it was a transformative experience for me to engage as a citizen, scholar, teacher in the what became the most compelling moral crisis of my lifetime, and remains as such as we meet today. And one final point, introductory point I would make is that the UN itself, through this partition resolution, became a site of Orientalist imposition of Western values and Western interests on the entire Middle Eastern area, but particularly at the expense of the Palestinian people that had already been prefigured by the Balfour Declaration at the end of World War One. So what one has is the UN as a ambiguous actor. It contributed to the initial exclusion of Palestinians from determining their own future in the initial resolution, and this has been culminated in the last few days by this shocking Security Council unanimous decision backing the falsely packaged Trump diplomacy, which is really a reward for Israeli genocide, as a peace proposal. So one of the challenges for us is to deconstruct and reconstruct a genuine peace and liberation for the Palestinian people. Let me stop there.
Thank you so much, Richard. This is an excellent, wonderful beginning. Huwaida is okay. Suggesting maybe Dr. Sweet. Well, that's okay. We can go from one rising colonial power to another one, which is chubby to it in the UK, not you.
UK. UK started it all. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's so good to be here, brothers and sisters. And Rabab, I just thank you so much because I was thinking, whenever I talk, I've got 200 slides, starting from 1982 all the way to yesterday in Gaza. But today, I don't think I need to talk all that because your curriculum will go through all that. But in the next kind of 5-10 minutes, I want to share with everybody that's here attending, young and old. And I just want to tell you, we are very, very privileged because we are in a part of history, the moment in history when we actually are empowered. We are empowered by the Palestinian struggle. We are inspired by the Palestinian people. We live in hope that liberation is a reality and not a dream. Because, it is something, when you look back at history, when you see UK and the Balfour, right, taking someone's home and giving it away, then you see the UN partition, wiping out half of Palestine, deporting half of the population. And then you see the war of Nakba, where Israel takes over 78% of the land. And then 1967, which the whole world celebrates, wiping out Palestinians from the map of the world altogether, and then giving back a little bit of land, and then slowly taking it back in a very painful way. But I just want to share with you a few bullet points, okay? I never knew Palestine existed until 1982, when I just naively went out as a Zionist doctor to work in Sabra Shatila. And the massacre shook me because the Palestinians whom I met and fell in love with are very strong, dignified, and generous people. And I actually love them. And then 3 weeks later, they were butchered, completely defenseless, and they were killed. That really shook me to the bottom. And for the first time, I realized how this could happen. You know, the dehumanization of a people, the impunity built by the press, and an overall ethos in the Western country, dehumanizing Arabs, colored people, Muslims, and allowing them to be killed. And even through their death, not granting them the rights. Why should a people write their history with their own blood? Why should we realize them as human beings only through their death? Why do we want to know that on their body is an identity card saying where they come from? The depopulated villages, the destroyed villages in Palestine. And yet, it is those people who taught me the meaning of struggle. That's lesson number one. When I thought that everything was lost, when there were rows and rows of dead bodies for recognition, for identifying, and the air of the refugee camp was filled with the stench of human decaying flesh. There was death and destruction. The Palestinians' children came to me and stood before me and tell me they are not afraid. Let Israel come. So that's lesson number one. The Palestinian children of Sabra and Shatila. Then came forward when I therefore decided that I have made a transition from being a Zionist Christian doctor to a supporter of Palestinians, and then grow a lifelong relationship and journey with them, which hopefully will never part, even in death. So MET was born not to be an NGO or humanitarian organization, but for the Palestinians to tell their story through humanizing them. It was my wish, and I just told our younger MET members that MET is not a relief organization. It is a campaign organization for the Palestinians, speaking out for the Palestinians, and through that also deliver aid. So that's what we're doing. So fast forward, after a few years in Lebanon, I was asked to go and work in Gaza during the first Intifada. And there I met more Palestinian children, extremely brave, extremely wonderful. And I learned and lived with Palestinians for 6 months until Israel got rid of me, which is fine. What else do you expect? Then came Oslo, when we were filled with hope, and many of my Palestinian friends try to forget that 78% of Palestine has become Israel. They thought with the 22%, they can build a Palestine state. That was not allowed. And then the second Intifada happened, not because the Palestinians wants to fight, but because the conditions were so repressive that there's no other way they could live. Fast forward, then we have Kaslet, and I was in Gaza, and it was so clear cut, and the weaponry used on the Palestinian people, the wounds that they suffer, and yet Palestine continue to live. I saw the hospitals being destroyed. And a couple of years later, I went back to Gaza and they've rebuilt, restarted, and they were working. Then came Protective Edge, even more severe, more than 2,000 people killed, 500,000 people homeless. Yet, the Palestinians taught me that they are builders and rebuilders. The women didn't give up. The Palestinian embroidery went on, and with every stitch, they restitched the history of Palestine. And, so, that kind of inspiration. And lately, I just want to tell you a couple of things which I've learned from my patients. I've been operating, since Sabra and Shatila, some of us decided that every year we go back and commemorate at the Martyr Square. What was the Martyr Square with more than 1,000 bodies buried underneath? There are quite a few mass graves in Shatila and all around Beirut. In fact, 17,000 people disappeared. 3,500 were murdered in 3 days. So 1,000 per day. And if you multiply it, if it continued for a year, you are talking about nearly 500,000 people would be killed. Fortunately, it did not. So we went back, and this was 2024. The genocide in Gaza already started, but I still went back, and then the pager attacks happened. I arrived on the day in the evening, where there were already 4,000, more than 4,000 people with a pager exploding in their hand. And I didn't go to the commemoration. I was taken to the hospital to operate on the wounded people. It was a very cruel attack because it was specific. It was calculated to maim. Any working person, me of all person, understand it. Next to losing your head and your brain, losing your hands is the next worst thing. And the people who carry pages are actually firefighters, ambulance drivers, doctors, nurses, people who are actively involved in medical, health, and civil defense of a country. So they're maimed. So it was, and then there was all this pro-Israeli tweet coming out that this is fantastic warfare, it's fantastic, it's specific, no collateral, you destroy the people you want to, and it's a horrendous crime. And I was pretty distraught. Yet that particular evening, I want to share with you, I went to talk to one of the patients because I know it was very bad because he had an engagement ring and that we have to take it out and amputate the finger, and he's lost his thumb. And the other hand was also wounded. He's blinded in one eye. And he actually, I usually, after an operation, when the patients wake up, I go and tell them what I've done, what else needs to be done, what is the likelihood of rehabilitation and so on. But this man didn't want to know. He just asked me, how are you feeling? I said, of course, I'm very, very sad. I'm really broken. And I'm also very angry that this can happen. And his answer was I don't know how to say it. He just said, doctor, please don't be angry. And please don't be sad, because I'm not sad. When I decided that I will stand on the side of justice, I've already decided that I will pay a price. And if this is a price, I have no regrets. So it's very difficult sitting next to a patient. I'm glad he couldn't see me crying. And that was the kind of courage I've come across. And then I'm very close to Gaza. Of course, the genocide hurt all of us. We look at it every day, and then we see the second ceasefire in January and people walking home to the ruins, 1 million people displaced from northern Gaza to south and then walking back to live in the ruin and rubble, pitching a tent, cleaning up some space to live. And then the ceasefire kind of break down and more people dying. And now we are into the third ceasefire and seeing the enforced starvation. And you know, when the third ceasefire came about, 641,000 people are already in stage 5 starvation, famine. And stage 5 famine is terrible because people will go and do anything to get food. You remember the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, where the fathers and the brothers will go walk miles and miles and miles for hours just to get a sack of flour, and upon getting it, be shot on the way back. That was Gaza just before the ceasefire. And the ceasefire did not come about out of the kindness of Israel or USA. It came about because it was such a scandal. And even the contractors who ran the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation stood up and lobbied Capitol Hill. So they are also the heroes because they spoke up. And they spoke up not counting what the cost would be. So the ceasefire came. Now, of course, we have been following the ceasefire. I don't want to go through the figures now. You know, you can Google it. It's all on the UN website. 70,000 dead already. Schools gone, you know, university gone. But yet, the Palestinians are not leaving. They've gone back. And they will not leave that land. There's an old farmer about my age who lived in Darabella. And his farm was destroyed. His brother killed. They bulldozed every building. They shot all the animals. They ripped up all the trees and put him in prison for 40 days, tortured him. And when he came out, when the ceasefire was about to happen, he told his daughter, go and rent me a bulldozer and a tent. I'm going back to clear the rubble. I live in a tent and rebuild this thing. And go and get me 1,200 olive saplings. I will replant all this. And his daughter said, Baba, yeah, so old, you'll never see the olive bear fruit. What he told his daughter, the olives are not for me. They're for you and your children. They are for Palestine and forever. That's when I realized and really internalized what the Palestinians always tell me. When the people want their freedom, they want their justice, they will get it. Maybe not this generation, maybe not even in the next generation, but they will get it. This is the precious lesson that I've learned from the Palestinian people. And sometimes people challenge me, why Palestine? Why are you fixated on Palestine? Because of my horrible past supporting Israel, maybe, but because of the inspiration my Palestinian friends have given me. Palestine has to make it, and we have to support them and make it with them. And with them, we will bring freedom and justice to the rest of the world. I better stop here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sui. Actually, like taking us throughout this history is like panorama reminds everybody what's going on, what's happening, and that's really very felt. And I can feel how painful you are feeling all of this stuff because you've been there throughout every single passage. I actually saw you the other day on TV walking in Shatila and speaking to many of our common friends. Thank you. We will, based on this, a great suggestion by Huwaida is this is the way we're going to we're going to, Huwaida suggested that she speaks next, and then we will go to Thiengo and Wael, and then whenever Mumia comes on, he speaks, and when we'll jump back to the question of what happened in 1947 in particular, and what happened in November 29, and end up more about the current situation. So, Huwaida, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Rabab. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with you. You know, or I hope you know how much I look up to you, and to be here with all my incredible co-panelists, it's quite an honor. I also want to acknowledge, because I am on Turtle Island, that I am on the contemporary homeland of the Anishinaabeg peoples, or the Three Fires Confederacy, which includes the Ottawa, Ojibwa, and the Potawatomi tribes. The stewardship of these peoples of this land endures despite centuries of displacement and erasure, and we must honor their ongoing presence, resistance, and sovereignty. And something else that you mentioned, Rabab, which it cannot be lost on us, is how here in the United States, around the same time, we honor the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. It comes only days after what this country calls Thanksgiving, right? Or you called it Thanksgiving, but it is a holiday that for Indigenous peoples is a day of mourning that commemorates survival in the face of settler colonialism, land theft, and attempted erasure. And that, like, in there is a deep, painful symmetry, right? To be marking Palestinian Solidarity Day in this same week, because the histories echo one another, and not because they're identical, but because they are rooted in shared structures of dispossession, but also confronted by unwavering resilience. And so, you know, as we are talking about this day and honoring Palestinian history, culture, and resistance, we do so with something, Dr. Rabab, that you've always insisted on and embodied in your work, which is one of the things I absolutely adore about you, is this understanding that is forged alongside Indigenous struggles. An understanding that our liberation is intertwined, that memory is resistance, and that solidarity across people's movements and struggles is not symbolic. Like, it can't be symbolic. It's necessary. And so a little bit about me and how I came to this work. I am Palestinian, but I was born and raised on Turtle Island in the United States. My parents left Palestine when my mother was very pregnant with me, almost 9 months pregnant with me. And they left their homeland and their families because they wanted to try to give their kids a better life, one that is not, you know, under military occupation. My mom's from the West Bank. My dad is from 48 Palestine, so actually a citizen of Israel. And Israel likes to use us Palestinian citizens to talk about how we have rights, but it is absolutely a surface level. Certain civil rights were not equal, and the state lets us know that every single day. Of course, they have what's called this nation state law, so we can't even be a nation that is only reserved for the Jewish people, and there are over 60 laws on Israel's books that discriminate against us because we're not Jewish. We are a demographic threat to Israel and are made to feel that every single day. And so even as a citizen of this settler colonial apartheid state, my parents believed that they would not be able to give their kids a future or a life where they could be free and have opportunity. And so they left and made their way to the United States. We used to go back regularly when I was young. And even at my young age, I would notice the differential in treatment, which was infuriating to me, but I did not become actively involved until I entered college. I went to the University of Michigan, and it was my first time where I was living amongst and studying with a lot of Jewish Americans, because I grew up in a town that did not include, it was not diverse at all. And I did not know Jewish Americans growing up. But a lot of the ones that were living next to me in the dorms and everything were the Zionist kind, not the many that we see and we are comrades with, that we're in the struggle with, not the anti-Zionist kind, but the Zionist kind that, you know, openly expressed their love for Israel, which horrified me and got me thinking about what I can do in the United States to open up these people's eyes, of my comrades, my fellow classmates, and I was by nature just very involved in activism growing up on different issues, not necessarily on Palestine, but injustice anywhere always infuriated me. And so what I could do about it was the question I always asked myself. And so when it came to Palestine, it was even deeper because I realized the struggle, the sacrifice that my parents had made for me. And I did have an opportunity to grow up where, we didn't have a lot growing up, but we had enough. And I was theoretically living in a free country, though, I say that with a lot of reservations, but I did have a lot of opportunity that most of my fellow Palestinians, that millions don't have. And I think that I firmly believe that with that opportunity comes responsibility. And so I decided after I graduated to move to the occupied Palestinian territories and to see how I could contribute to my people's liberation struggle more directly. And at the time it was to work for, what they call a conflict resolution organization, which I firmly oppose these days. And it's not because I don't believe in talking to the other side or debating or in conflict resolution, but I don't believe that programs that focus on this and try to sideline, marginalize, or discredit other means of a people's resistance, then these kinds of programs work counter to a people's liberation struggle and strategies. Because these programs like to focus on bringing people together as if we just need to get along, as opposed to actually doing the work necessary to dismantle the structures that tear people apart, to dismantle settler colonialism and apartheid, occupation, oppression, all of these things. And so they're very harmful. And I did realize that working within the system, and I was a little bit too naive initially, but sometimes naivete is not a bad thing, because I think it drove me to, with some fellow activists, Palestinians and anti-Zionist Israelis, co-found the International Solidarity Movement. And it was, the International Solidarity Movement was an effort to, an attempt to globalize the Intifada, the Palestinian Intifada, to get people, internationals around the world, actively on the ground in Palestine, with us standing with Palestinians. Because what I saw with my own eyes on the ground is that Palestinians resisting alone, even non-violently, which the world calls on us to do all the time, right? Most Palestinian resistance over the decades has been non-violent, but that's never acknowledged. But people resisting to be able to stay on their land, and resisting the colonial taking of their lands, and various forms of oppression were being seriously maimed, arrested, disappeared, tortured, and killed. Many killed with absolutely no accountability, which Professor Falk and also Dr. Swee talked about, this lack of accountability, so I won't go into it. But how we could try to change the dynamics on the ground, how we could give Palestinians more of a resource. We know all of the resources that Israel has, the billions of dollars from the US, the endless supply of weapons, and the political cover to be able to do really whatever they want. But what resources did Palestinians have? We know, and I know as a Palestinian, that we have truth and justice on our side, but something more practical. We thought of this kind of active on the ground international solidarity. And so we put out this call for people to come, not really knowing if it would work. And it did. And I won't go into too much, but the International Solidarity Movement still operates on the ground today, providing more of I don't even like to call it protective presence, but the violence is so bad that, some of the things that we used to do early on, this directly confronting, tearing down checkpoints and dismantling roadblocks and trying to prevent home demolitions, and all of these things have become a lot more difficult with just the absolute impunity and violence that the Israeli, not only settlers, but government is operating with in the West Bank, not just in Gaza. In Gaza, the ISM used to also operate, but in 2003, Israel killed a couple of our colleagues in Gaza, Rachel Corrie, who many listeners probably have heard of, and another one of our colleagues, Tom Herndahl, only killed a couple of weeks after Rachel Corrie was killed. And so instead of any kind of accountability, holding people accountable for what they've done, Israel just decided to not let any more internationals into Gaza and closed it off back in 2003. Of course, it's always controlled who gets in and out, and especially Palestinians. But internationals, we used to be able to get in, and that's how Rachel and a team of activists were in Gaza. But after 2003, we couldn't get in anymore in 2006 because Israel didn't like the outcome of Palestinian elections, decided to further punish Palestinians and impose this medieval siege, tightly controlling or restricting just all kinds of things from entering and exiting, which not only destroyed the Palestinian economy, but was leading to actual deaths even back then in 2006 because people couldn't get the medical treatment they needed. So you had international organizations sending out reports about the rising rates of malnutrition and anemia and stunted growth in children. And, you know, a lot of the same, where at best you had lip service paid to Palestinian rights, but nobody stopping Israel, nobody putting the pressure that is needed to stop Israel from committing these crimes. And so as we were talking amongst ISM activists, what is possible to do? Someone had the idea of, let's try sailing a boat to Gaza. Let's try going through the sea because we can't get in via land. And that's how the idea for trying to confront the naval blockade started. And in 2008, I was on one of 2 small boats that actually made it to Gaza, challenging Israel's illegal blockade. And we promised the people of Gaza that we would continue. We wouldn't let this be a one-time thing, but we would continue trying to sail in and out until we actually broke the siege. Fast forward a little bit, after Operation Cast Lead started, which Dr. Sweet spoke about a little. And I remember trying to communicate with Dr. Sui and Dr. Mads Gilbert, who were in Gaza around this time for Operation Cast Lead. We tried to send an emergency mission to get in and bring, because Israel wasn't allowing in medical supplies and was really actually trying to keep journalists and doctors and everything out. Israel started hitting our boats. And we tried to go a few times, and Israel each time violently attacked our vessels. So we weren't getting in anymore via the sea. But we didn't want to stop. We wanted to keep our promise that we were going to continue acting against this siege using global popular resistance. And so we organized the 2010 Freedom Flotilla, which was, you know, it wasn't just a few dozens of people on 1 or 2 small boats. It was 7 vessels, 4 cargo ships carrying 10,000 tons of aid. We had 700 people take to the sea, and Israel launched a lethal attack on us at the end of May 2010, killing 10 of our activists on those boats. You know, that didn't stop us. It's important to say that it didn't stop us, but the same pattern of Israel not being held accountable continued, and this pattern of impunity where Israel's constantly just increasing the level of violence and pushing it until it kind of numbs people, and then it increases it more. This is why what we have today, a live stream genocide that they brag about, because they don't think that they'll be held accountable, that they can be held accountable because their history shows them that they get away with everything. But I think we are at this turning point. Is my comrade Mumia with us? Should I stop and let him go? In brief, I'll just end there.
Because I'll bring you back.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Okay. Hello. Come on in.
Apologies. I didn't put that up.
No, welcome.
Mumia, he sent a recording.
Okay.
So I have that available.
Oh, okay. So then we can do it. Then we can do it. Finish Huwaida, what you were saying.
Yeah, quite.
Since we have a recording from Mumia, we'll put the picture and we'll have him speak. Yeah.
Oh, well, I will just wrap up by saying, you know, what we saw this past summer of, you know, those 2 small boats in 2008 that have become dozens of boats and hundreds of people and plans to even increase. It's encouraging. It's sad in a way that we still have to be, because the blockade was illegal when it was initially imposed. It's a war crime. Now it's being used to deliberately starve an entire population, being used as a tool of Israel's genocide. So it's sad that we still have to do these flotillas, but it's very important that we not accept, that we not normalize the war crimes and Israel's control when they absolutely have no right to control what gets in and out of Gaza. And the fact that all of our countries and organizations sit around and try to negotiate with Israel, allowing Israel to control what aid gets into a people that they are actively genociding, is an outrageous world order that we cannot accept. And so it's important that we continue to directly challenge it in this and other ways. And it's encouraging to see millions of people around the world wanting to support now this effort. And the message is that, when our governments fail, people will continue to act and must act. So I know we'll talk more. So let me end there. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you.
Thank you. Oh, where is it? Okay. Oh my God. Okay, hold on. Thank you so much, Huwaida. We are going to go now to, first we're going to go to Thiango, because he actually has another big meeting. Thiango will speak about himself and his experience, and also about the flotilla. And then when I think Wael went to take care of another activity, and he will come back, and we will also get back to Dr. Falk to talk about what is the partition itself, and what happened in between the two. And if you want to talk about the mandate in 1922, anyway, the political, because we talked about that and the significance of November 29, and I think that would be really a place for Mumia to speak, because it's already recorded. We have 15 minutes, so we can include in it. So please, Thiango, thank you so much for joining us. Ahla wa sahla, and alhamdulillah as-salamah that you are safe. You and Huwaida, all of you, every one of you is like a criminal. So I'm very happy to be amongst you. Go ahead.
Thank you
Thiango.
so much, Dr. Rabab. And thank you, everybody who's been here before me. There are great political references, and I'm very honored to be here with all of you. I am Tiago Avila. I'm an environmentalist and internationalist from Brazil, from the Global South, and I'm part of the steering committee of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition of the Global Sumut Flotilla. I've been on the many missions this year to try to break the siege, but on boats on the way to Gaza, that boats that didn't break, that were not defeated by bureaucratic warfare before that. I was on the Madeleine, and then I was on the Family, and then the Alma boat of the Global Sumut Flotilla. I've been dedicated myself to activism for 21 years. I'm 39 years old now. I was 18 when I understood that the world that we live in, it's a world full of violations, a system that exploits, oppresses, and destroys nature, a system that enables genocide not only in Palestine, but also in Sudan, in Congo, of indigenous people in Latin America and many other places, and also a system that promotes ecocide, like in the Amazon and all the other biomes in the world, including Palestine. So trying to be useful for the struggle to defeat this system and build a new society has been the objective of my life, the purpose which I dedicated all my life to do. And with that, I've been fortunate enough very early to get to know Palestine. It was 2005 when I was trying to understand, feeling like I was a very stupid person because I was seeing on the TV in Brazil, they criticizing the Ariel Sharon's reallocation plan and showing how cruel it was to remove the settlers from Gaza, the Zionist colonies from Gaza. And I was seeing that and I was thinking, that is so weird, because I always heard that they wanted to take over that land. Why are their own soldiers removing their own people from Gaza? And that didn't click with me immediately. But then I understood that was part of a very cruel plan of turning Gaza into a concentration camp and then an extermination camp. So in 2005, that happened with me. I trying to understand. I got to know solidarity movements in Brazil. I got to understand that this was part of a historic resistance that involves the resistance on the ground, but also the Palestinians in the diaspora, and social movements and solidarity from liberation movements everywhere in the world. And I decided to take part in that and to support as much as I could. So in 2006, when Israel bombed again Gaza, escalated the genocide, and tried to invade Lebanon, and was defeated by Lebanese resistance in the south of the Litani River, I was by then a very active member against that violation and doing the demonstrations and mobilizing as well. I remembered from afar seeing Huwaida and others in the 2010 Freedom Flotilla and the tragic result that it had. And I always had the flotilla in my imaginary as one of the most beautiful, selfless, and bold actions that civilians could make in a nonviolent context. And I didn't know that many years later I would be part as an organizer of that. But I always admired so much this construction. I've been to Palestine before. I've been to the West Bank. I've been to the territories occupied in 48. I've been to Gaza border before. And I was never allowed into Gaza, but I've seen the apartheid colonial state right on. And it was something that changed me a lot because I already made political education courses by then to our social movements. I wrote about Palestine. I mobilized so much for Palestine in our countries. But seeing that in person, passing through the first checkpoint, through this hyper security, hyper vigilance, and so coercive environment, that changes a person. Or when you're going to a bus and you go through a road blockade and they enter the bus with the rifles pointing at us, and you can see how violent existence can be, how much the military occupation permeates every aspect of the life of every single Palestinian in historical Palestine. So that changed me a lot as well. And after I came back from that experience, it took me actually months before being able to say something, because what I always felt is that doesn't matter which video I make. I already produced content for social media by then, but I was always thinking that doesn't matter which video I make, I'll never be able to honor the courage and the inspiration of the Palestinian people, and I'll never be able to be as precise about the level of violation. So that kind of blocked me, and then eventually I said, no, I have to talk it anyway. I can, with any means I can, and be useful, because that's what the Palestinians asked me to do when I was there, and that's what the Palestinians in the diaspora asked me to do. So I would talk in any way that I could, and being part of the solidarity movement. When October 2023 came, I was already between the communicators that were in a very dedicated front to counter misinformation and to echo Palestinian voices who were broadcasting and live streaming their own genocide. And that changed the world. And the Palestinians gave to the world the lenses to see society as it really is. And so it completely disappeared. It crumbled into pieces. The ideological colonial construction that would state forever that the global north was the beacon of human rights, democracy, and civil liberties. And very soon it was very clear how coercive, how violent, how dictatorial these regimes can be once you don't abide to their rules, once you don't abide to their discourse, once you try to show what they are funding, once you try to stop what they are funding with your own taxpayer money. And so we started seeing, not from North Korea, not from Venezuela, people being arrested by holding a paper sign in the street, or people being arrested and brutally beaten for sitting down in the lawn of your college or university campus, or people being raided in their own homes and attacked in Berlin, for example, just by organizing an event that said from the river to the sea. So the Palestinian gave us the lenses to see the imperialist society and the global north countries as colonial regimes as they really are. And also the Palestinian gave the world a map and the way to pursue liberation, which is to remain steadfast, which is to remain with integrity, which is to never give up, never to give up your land, never to give up your values, never to give up your sumut in the end. That's the teaching that changed the world. And so what happened is that in 2 years, the Palestinians enabled a global uprising in the world that went, of course, in an anti-Zionist perspective against the colonization of Palestine, against the 8 decades of genocide and ethnic cleansing, the apartheid colonial state, and this racist and supremacist ideology called Zionism, but also against imperialism itself, because people quickly made a connection about Sudan and Congo, about the violations in the Sahel, about the attempts to colonize Latin America in a newly organized Monroe Doctrine. and people connected with their own problems in their own country. So it was a beautiful thing to see that this mobilization that mobilized millions of people in the streets, it was mobilized not by domestic topics, but by an internationalist topics, which was solidarity with Palestine. And eventually we got to a point that in a planet of 8 billion people, we have a social majority, that the majority of these 8 billion people supports Palestine in a way that they don't accept the genocide. They know that bombing school shelters and hospitals is wrong, that starving children to death is just wrong. And it's increasing and increasing and increasing the amount of people that are willing to do something about this. And the flotillas have been wonderful experiences, because when they come, they help the world to unite into specific dates, the dates of the launch, the dates when we are attacked by drones or whatever happens through our journeys, or the days we are intercepted, or the days where we are kept in Israeli colonial dungeons. And all of this helps the world to have specific dates of struggle united and combined that are very, very powerful, that promoted general strikes like in Italy, that promoted so much pressure over the complicity of the governments of the global north, especially, that really helped to change policy. But the flotillas are not enough. They're just a tool. They are together with the demonstrations, with the boycotting, with the amazing and brave people disrupting the armed factories and being severely persecuted and criminalized, but still continuing this important work, with the people producing free information, with the people breaking the media blockade or breaking the algorithms of this horrible big techs as well, with the people producing emancipatory content and emancipatory knowledge in the universities, like this discussion here today, with people doing any type of work in solidarity for Palestine or building a society that is free of exploitation, oppression, and the destruction of nature. So the Palestinians have really changed the world, and it's beautiful to see that even despite the fact that we have some very complicated situation, an increasingly complicated situation, because situation in Palestine is far from being over. The idea of the ceasefire was not an idea to promote self-determination for the Palestinian people, to promote true peace. They only accepted this ceasefire, they only pushed for this ceasefire because they wanted to contain the global uprising. Donald Trump is very transparent in what he thinks about situation, and he said to Netanyahu, "You cannot fight the whole world by yourself." And by when he talks about the whole world, he means us, all of us together, with the Palestinian people, led and inspired by the Palestinian people. We defeated the most hateful ideology of this generation, which is Zionism. And we defeated the industrial military complex of the most dangerous and most destructive military power that ever existed, which is the United States of America and its imperialism. So it's amazing what we achieved in 2 years. But now they have very smart techniques to try to dismantle the global uprising, and to try to confuse and to try to numb and neutralize this mobilization. And what we need to do is to remain being the stubborn people that keeps on going no matter what, until Palestine is not free of occupation, free of 8 decades of genocide and ethnic cleansing, free of the apartheid colonial state, free of this racist and supremacist ideology called Zionism, free of this horrific siege of 18 years. We'll keep on going by boats, by sea, on our countries, doing whatever we need to do in solidarity with the people that has the right to live in peace like any other people, that has the right to live with their self-determination. And it's our duty and our responsibility to do so, also in retribution for the people who gave too much for humanity, like the Palestinian people did. So I'm honored to be here with all of you, because we are all part of this same struggle, part of this same historical mission, the most important mission in the history of humanity, and the most decisive moment that is being played now for the future of humanity. So I'm very honored to be here among all of you, and I hope all the best to all of you. And I excuse myself, I'm sorry that I have to leave, but I'm going to watch because I know we are recording here. And thank you so much for having me here among you.
Thank you so much, Diego, for joining us. We saw you a lot when they were beating you up, and they were so annoyed by a chain. I mean, this is like, imagine this mighty country, one of the mightiest in the world, is annoyed by a chain in the map of Palestine. The things that you put it in there, and you think about the mighty Zionist discourse, is constantly being threatened by symbols, and they bring students to trial, they arrest people, they expel people, they treat you, mistreat you. There is a flotilla that's coming with food and medicine and baby milk, and why you brought in even toys to kids. I mean, this is, when you think about that. Anyway, I'm not going to go on a rampage, but I am. And it really lifts our spirit when we see all the genocide and all the damage and all the deaths that Israel is raining on Palestinians and children, and saying children should be killed. Because when they grow up, and if they grow up, they will become a security threat to Israel. It's sadness. It's insane. It's madness. But we also know rationally why these things happen. So thank you so much. We will have you again, because we want to also talk about Latin America and the Caribbean, and talk about those conditions as well. Venezuela is being targeted, Colombia is being targeted, Cuba has been under siege for a very long time. So we also need to talk about how does that work, because the greed of the US and its aggression doesn't stop. They keep poking everywhere, and because they don't have enough 1% of the wealth of the world. They want to have more, and they want to control more, and that brings us back to Palestine. So thank you so much for being with us, and you promise us to be back here again. All right, I'm gonna check to see if Wael is back, because he's been having problems. Oh yeah, so we do not know if he's going to come back. I think I would like to leave the last 15 minutes for Mumia to be able to give his speech. So I think that would be the end. It's already, since it's already taped. I would like us. Yeah, I am not that he's been messaging me on WhatsApp. There is something wrong with the Wi-Fi in Tunisia, and especially when people like trying to do things of this sort. It's somehow something happens. But I would like those of you who are still here with us, Professor Falk, Dr. Sui, and my sister Huwaida, to actually discuss the questions that we mentioned. We mentioned, what does November 29th in 1947? We spoke about it a little bit, but maybe tie things a little bit for the students, how it is connected with the 1922, the mandate discuss, agreement. This is kind of like, these are, when you look at all of them, every single time the United Nations comes in one form or another and comes up with a resolution that basically diffuses, and anything that is happening that is Palestinians are resisting. There were a lot of resistance after Balfour Declaration, and then they come and they stomp it. There is also the 1936-39 revolt. They start cooking, and then they come up with that partition plan. Every single time now, the world looks like it is in sympathy with the Palestinians. They come up with the peace plan, and it's not just the US. The UN is part of it, and that is something that. And I want to actually even ask this question to you, Professor Falk, because you have served in many positions at the UN, and you were also made to leave in different places when you were rapporteur. But it's also, it's sort of like, it's there, and it makes itself bigger than life, and it keeps passing. And now they even approved this so-called plan that has nothing to do with peace. So if you can go into that, and I would like maybe Dr. Sui and Hoida to talk about the solidarity. What is the future for the flotillas? You both were the future for the flotillas. What is the future for solidarity for you, Dr. Falk? What is the future for tribunals? What next? What do we need to do next? What do we need to do in the classes? Because we reach a stage. What is it that we need to do? So let's talk about maybe these 2-3 questions, and then we have Mumia, and we'll have to end. Yeah. So go ahead, Professor.
Oh, I believe you're muted.
We can't hear you, Professor Falk.
Okay.
You're good. You're good.
Is that okay now? Before trying to say something more about what was wrong with the partition resolution, I just wanted to say that the emphasis given by the three presentations we've heard converge on one important political insight, and that is that when the established normative order fails in a situation of this humanitarian severity, it is the responsibility and opportunity of civil society activism to fill that moral vacuum that's created by the failure of the institutions and the governments. And we should remember that the UN was designed in a certain way to fail in situations of this sort because it gave to the winners of World War II complete control over the management of global security by virtue of the veto. And that's very important to keep in mind, that written into the UN framework is impunity for the most powerful and dangerous political actors in the world, and not only for them, but for their friends and allies. And Israel probably couldn't have embarked on this kind of genocidal assault without the assurance of the geopolitical backing of the US and its NATO partners. And we should really keep in mind that this is not only a war between Israel and Palestine, and it's not really a war at all because Israel has no role as an occupying power to regard its the people under occupation as an enemy giving rise to the right of self-determination. Israel's obligation to the people was to protect their security and safety and health and well-being. That's the whole point of the Geneva Convention on Belligerent Occupation. And Israel, from the beginning, has defied that and has suffered no adverse consequences as a result. But also, Israel, with the backing of the liberal democracies and the white ex-colonial powers associated especially with the British Empire, have waged a civilizational struggle against Islam. And this represents what Samuel Huntington talked about at the end of the Cold War a clash of civilizations. And so it's not only that there is this racialized support of Zionism, but also there's the geopolitical project of controlling hegemonically the Middle East. And that's why it has been particularly the US that is the most geopolitically active country supporting Israel has continued this unconditional posture of support, while the European countries have sort of stepped back a little bit in deference to rising opposition from their own citizenry. The UN is very difficult to assess in this broader context, because on one level, the UN is paralyzed by its own framework, which I was referring to, the geopolitical management of global security gives the US and actually France and the UK as well this unhealthy control over the organization. And this is reinforced by the funding of the UN being largely in the hands of the Western liberal democracies. And that intimidates the UN Permanent Civil Service. At the same time, the UN has played a very positive role creating this atmosphere that Tiago presented very clearly of Israel's delegitimation and the legitimation of the solidarity initiatives such as BDS, promoting an arms embargo, ending normal diplomatic relations, sports, and cultural boycotts that are being promoted around the world. This all represents the mobilizing reaction to the dramatic violations of the most minimal requirements of international law and international morality. And that has been given an authoritative character by the decisions of the International Court of Justice, particularly, where it has, by near unanimous votes, both cast a incriminating doubt on any claim that Israel was using permissible force in response to the October 7th attack. It is remembered for the affirmation of a plausible genocide, and this is coupled with the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice in July of 2024, which invalidated Israel's presence in Gaza or the West Bank and called for the immediate withdrawal from Gaza on the part of Israel, setting a one-year deadline that has now expired. And this has been endorsed by the General Assembly, defied by Israel, ignored by the liberal democracies, that, and in this case, in all of them, not, as far as I know, there's been no effort to give authority to implement the July 19th advisory opinion, which expired, the one-year deadline expired on September 18th, and yet nothing happens. And so there is this dual role of the UN. It is legitimating flotilla activism and other forms of solidarity with the Palestinian struggle. It also has contributed the most authoritative descriptions and an analysis of why Israel is guilty of genocide in relation to the Genocide Convention, both by the Special Rapporteur, Francesca Albanese, and by the Commission of Inquiry that was established by the Human Rights Council under the chairmanship of Navi Pillay, a former judge from South Africa. Both of these sources owe their validity, the validity of their positions, to the UN. And in this sense, the UN has spoken a degree of truth to power. Power has, in turn, engaged in very disreputable behavior, sanctioning the special rapporteur, the unpaid special rapporteur of the UN, by imposing sanctions that bar her entry to the US and freeze her assets. In other words, punishing truth-telling so as to make permissible the dissemination of falsehoods and lies. And we see this throughout the Trump diplomacy, that it tries to displace truth by propaganda, state propaganda that is filtered by a corporatized media in such a way as to soften the hostility of public opinion to what Israel has been doing. It's a losing battle, as has been suggested, but perhaps a very long one. And so I would say that it's important to understand that the UN has been part of the problem, but also part of the solution to the problem. And therefore, either relying on the UN or condemning it miss the complexity of the situation that faces those of us that are seeking a justice-driven outcome of the Palestinian struggle. And it's important to know that the recourse to people's tribunals, of which there's been a very successful one that just concluded in Istanbul, Gaza People's Tribunal, rests on this sense of the legitimacy of seeking an outcome in accord with justice rather than a legalistic rendering of right and wrong. And this has been given a certain mandate by a jury, the final statement of the jury of conscience at the People's Tribunal in Istanbul, which is an important document of how to think about a just outcome to the Palestinian struggle, and also why a people's tribunal, unlike a national court or even an international court, is governed more by conscience in relation to morality and justice than it is by strictly adhering to law. And it's a very partisan undertaking. In other words, there's no illusion that there are two sides to what is happening to the Palestinian people as a result of genocide. It is a condemnation as a premise of the inquiry. And what it tries to do is to lend legitimacy to the wider solidarity struggle and to validate Palestinian resistance and celebrate Palestinian resilience. Let me stop there.
This is incredible. Thank you so much, Professor Falk. This is really great, and it's a very good. I just wanted to add one thing and then move on to the next and make an announcement. I was also just at the tribunal, also popular tribunal in the Spanish state, and they had 50 public universities. 46 of them participated, but 50 have endorsed popular to complicity in apartheid, also looking into their own state and their own every aspect of government. And this is incredible. And this is something actually they were inspired by the various tribunals that you've participated in, because also this is what brings up public pressure in order to move things. The United Nations took a very long time to act on apartheid. United Nations still has not continued to, has not acted, enforced the question of reparations, the questions of colonization of many colonies and so on. United Nations moves very slow because of the balance of forces, because of the way you said it is set up. But it means, but now there is the people of the world are moving and moving and moving, and things are changing on the basis of the word. And this is what our next speakers will. We'll do two things. One, we are going to play the video from Mumia. Then we are going to extend, with your permission, the discussion 15 minutes. We hope you all can stay. But we definitely, Sui and Hawaida haven't discussed. It's a formal part of the class. And then we will wrap it up, and we will publish the words of Wael, because his internet completely shut off. He cannot come on. So we will publish, and we're also going to talk to you about publishing your own speeches. Will be online, but it also in writing would be helpful if you are okay with it. So with your permission, let's hear what Mumia is sending to us from behind the prison. And I think he only did it last night, because we talked yesterday afternoon. So, and the people are protesting outside for him. Is that okay with you, Sui and Huaida? And Professor Folk also, if you want to stay and weigh in, would be really great.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's go for Mumia now. I'm eager to see what he says.
Oh, give me just one moment while I troubleshoot.
Palestine amid imperial colonial war. I greet you all, especially Sister Rabab, who invited me to join you, all of you, several weeks ago. So I greet you all. Marhaba. I greet you all, especially Sister Rabab, who invited me to join you, all of you, several weeks ago. So I greet you all. Marhaba. When we think of Palestine today, our minds fly naturally to the last few years of carnage that has cost, at the very least, 70,000 lives, those of men, women, and children, and over 90% of Palestinian buildings and structures in Gaza destroyed by Israeli and U.S. bombs. But I think it important to turn our eyes away and turn back the clock and calendar almost 100 years ago, when the British gave its imprimatur to land transfers from Arabs to Jewish immigrants from Europe. When the British Empire held lands under its League of Nations trusteeship, the forerunner to the United Nations. There we see the imperial beginnings to this crisis to come. On November 2nd, 1917, author James Balfour, the Earl of Balfour, wrote a letter to Lionel Walter, Lord Rothschild, the following. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. You've been listening to what has been called the Balfour Declaration of 1917. At the time, Britain held sway over one of the largest empires on earth, with lands in North America, Africa, and Asia, not to mention vast holdings scattered throughout the seas, like islands. Does it not really surprise us that they offered not a foot of land in Europe? From that day to this, Palestinian lands have been stolen, their holdings denied, and their farmlands whittled away. It is impossible to look at this as anything other than an imperial and neo-colonial conspiracy designed to prejudice the rights of the Palestinian people. How could Israel violate international law for almost a century, with the United Nations looking the other way? This happens because we misunderstand the role really played by the UN, the successor to the failed League of Nations. Fortunately, Frantz Fanon, in his Toward the African Revolution, explains, we can say that two mistakes were simultaneously committed by the Africans. First of all, by Lumumba himself, when he asked for the intervention of the UN. The UN has never been capable of validly settling a single one of the problems raised before the conscience of man by colonialism. And every time it has intervened, it was in order to come concretely to the rescue of the colonial power of the oppressing country. That's Fanon. Fanon, this man whose mind pierced into the very core of reality, understood the central nature of the UN and wrote as follows. In reality, the UN is the legal card used by the imperialist interests when the card of brute force has failed. Fanon. Fanon wrote these insights in the wake of the betrayal and assassination of Congolese leader Patrice Lumumba. Lumumba's first great mistake, he noted, was his trust in the West and the UN. It cost him not only his life, but the collective lives and futures of the people of the Congo. We ponder these developments in light of the creeping occupation of Palestine and its territories, itself a violation of international law, as well as the emergence of Israel as a de facto regional hegemon in the Middle East. Some have likened the Zionist state to an aircraft carrier. Think of that. A weapon of war, indeed, a weapon of mass destruction in the region. The 1,000 plus years of European oppression of Jews is being paid by Arabs in Palestine. For Europe is the site of repeated Jewish expulsion, traumatization, and, as the German experience has shown us, genocidal destruction of Jews en masse. These historical experiences have created an intense otherness in Jewish consciousness that makes the extreme seem perfectly normal, for extremity has become normalized. This means that in order to mitigate its own otherness, the Jewish state had to make the leap from former British colony to an entity which exercised colonial power, which is to say, it had to act like a European power. How was this done? They had to treat the Palestinians, the indigenous people of the land, as others. This they have done since, indeed before, the establishment of Israel in 1948. I suggest here that much of the psychological energy fueling Israel is a hunger to really become something that it never was in over a millennia in Europe, European. Much of that energy has been projected upon the Palestinians rather than their true historical enemies, Europeans. State power, supported by the purchase and manufacture of weaponry, has given it the ability to make psychological energy into reality in the real world today. Cameroonian scholar Attila Mbembe, in his now classic work, Necropolitics, examines the underlying conflicts between states and colonies thusly. Colonies are similar to frontiers inhabited by quote unquote savages. Colonies are not organized as a state to one mark. Colonies are not organized as a state form and do not create a human world. The armies do not form a distinct entity, and their wars are not wars between regular armies. They do not imply the mobilization of sovereign subjects, what are called citizens, who respect each other as enemies. They do not establish a distinction between combatants and non-combatants, or, again, between an enemy and a criminal. Concluding peace with them is thus impossible. In some, colonies are zones in which war and disorder, internal and external, figures of the political stand side by side or alternate with each other. The colony is thus the site par excellence where controls and juridical control and guarantees of judicial order can be suspended. The zone where the violence of the state of exception is deemed to operate in the service of quote unquote civilization. Mbembe, page 77. What we see in Mbembe's citation is the colonization, otherization, and depersonalization of Palestinians, even as the state eats and encroaches on indigenous lands of Palestinian people. The recent war against Hamas was, in fact, a war against Palestinians, as evinced by the death of some 70,000 souls in Gaza. That colonial versus the colonized dialectic discussed by Mbembe is the roadmap of the territorial 2-1 mark. Discussed by Mbembe is the roadmap of a territorialization of oppression. For nearly a century, Palestine has been under attack. They are still under attack, just by more violent means today. They struggle on as they must do, even as their present life is truly the wretched of the earth. And speaking of Fanon's masterwork, the only solution to such a state is ceaseless struggle against the colonizer until it is no more. For only then can a new independent nation be born to give voice and place to the wretched of the earth. With love, not fear. This is Mumia Abu Jamal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my God. Do you want to give some comments, reactions, or something? It's amazing, right? Comments, responses. We have 15 more minutes actually.
I think I'm overwhelmed,
Yeah.
you know, by what he said and the way he said it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Professor Falk? Waida? You're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, I felt that this was a suitable culminating presentation that brought together both the feelings that animated the prior speakers and a deeply felt anti-colonialism that took inspiration from Fanon and necropolitics, and showed the failure that resulted for both the Palestinians and colonial peoples to the extent they trusted the UN and the West, and particularly the US. And I remember Edward Said saying, breaking with the Palestinian National Council because of Arafat's excessive reliance on what he was being told to do by the US State Department. And that kind of colonialized mentality that Fanon, I think, is responsible for exposing, was part of the early Palestinian difficulty that arose from the false belief that they could accommodate colonial penetration of this Zionist movement, when Zionism from its beginning had the vision of recovering the so-called Promised Land, in which David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, cynically, he was very secularist, but he cynically said, the Bible will be our instrument, our weapon. The Bible will be our weapon. And what he meant by that was that the illegitimacy of colonial settler project will be disguised in the form of this religiously sanctified quest for sacred territory, and completely at odds with the normative premises of the modern world. And I thought Mumia brought out very eloquently this whole entanglement of the colonized mind and the realities of imperial colonialism. And one of the things I think that we were trying to express was that in this genocidal period, finally, the Palestinians have decisively broken through that paralysis that comes from incorporating in one's own mentality the mentality of the colonialists. And I think now the Palestinian identity has been so legitimized by its own resistance and by the solidarity it has gained from peoples around the world. So we're in a new stage.
Professor, Huwaida and then Sui, You can even exchange between each other. If you don't, you don't have to comment on Mumia if you don't have to. If you think his statement is enough, but I want you also to speak about where the solidarity movement. You all spoke about it, and you've been also embodiment of it. Where do we go from here? What do we need to do? It's very clear that every single time Palestinians seem resilient, steadfast, make so many gains that we talked about. The U.S. with the support of other Western countries come in and they present something else that does seduce some, definitely the Arab countries and some very small part of the Palestinians, to alter the path. But we have a very what can we do where we are? What needs to be done? Is there going to be another flotilla? What's going you if you don't have to? You don't
Yeah,
want to
no,
do that. Go ahead. Yeah.
I will speak a little bit. I'll try to comment. I mean, Mumia was very eloquent on his own, obviously, and Professor Fulks also follow up, very poignant. I'll just add that I sadly 100% agree that Palestinian leadership, and I say leadership, but I mean leaders in name only, because they've ceased to represent the aspirations and the will of the Palestinian people, but they have succumbed to this colonial mind, and we see it just all of the time, and more recently with this Palestinian effort to, draft to work with France to draft a Palestinian constitution as another way of trying to jump through the hoops that the very powers that enable Israel put in Palestinians' way as a condition of our own liberation, which is a complete violation of international law, but they see it as trying to be practical, and it has been so destructive and continuing to set us back. I want to briefly also say that, Professor Falk talked a lot about the faults of the UN, and this day, the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian People, of course, established by the United Nations General Assembly in 1977, and back then it had a purpose, right? It was to acknowledge the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, that the Palestinian people have a right to self-determination and national independence, and the right to sovereignty, the right of refugees to return to their homes. And it was meant to remind the world in 1977 that those rights still had not been fulfilled. But when we look at what, the basis for it, UN Resolution 181, as Professor Falk kind of talked about, and also Mumia, in itself was inherently unjust. It took away the land of the indigenous people without their consent. And international law, both then and now, recognizes a right of peoples to self-determination. No people can be legally dispossessed of their country without their consent. And UN Resolution 181 overrode this principle by imposing what was supposed to be a political solution against the clearly expressed will of the majority population. And there are all kinds of things wrong with it, including allocating most of the land to a minority settler population, disregarding all of the demographic engineering, and that then enabled all of these Zionist claims. So in and of itself, the UN, by these various resolutions, still inherently contributed to the dispossession of the Palestinian people. And then despite this, declaration of this day of solidarity with the Palestinian people that is supposed to remind the world that there are still Palestinian rights that remain unmet, what we need to understand is the very reason that rights are unmet and the obligations of the international community are unfulfilled is because of the United Nations, because they have been, it is the international community of states has been impotent in the face of Israeli US aggression and land theft and colonization and oppression, completely impotent. And, despite all of these claims, we have the 1948 Genocide Convention, where supposedly the world said never again. And after that, we have other conventions. 1960, there was the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment. Oh, sorry, the 1973 was the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid, which is absolutely occurring in Palestine. In 1960, you had the Convention on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples, and of course, the Zionism is a settler colonial project. You have these declarations, no to genocide, no to colonialism, no to apartheid, and yet it is precisely the impotence of the international community in the face of these things that have allowed it to continue in Palestine, and that is what we see today. And in fact, we've recently seen just the most historical, I would say, betrayal of not only the Palestinian people, but of the very principles that the United Nations claims to defend and uphold, with the November 17th passing of UN Security Council resolution, which adopted the Trump plan, which is a plan that's not designed to achieve the rights of the Palestinian people, but rather it is the most dangerous effort in recent years to make international law completely irrelevant. Instead, installing this neo-colonial trusteeship run by those who have armed, funded, and politically shielded Israel for decades. And so, although the world is talking in Washington as this ceasefire, we know there's no ceasefire, but the need for solidarity has never been more urgent. The genocide has not ended, and it's not only because bombs and guns and continue to go off and bombs continue to fall, but Israel is continuing to destroy the very fabric of Palestinian life, make life in Gaza and also in the West Bank completely unlivable. Won't go into the details about that. I'm hoping people know that there continues to be a genocide being committed on our watch. So the need for our actions and our collectively and independently is as important now than ever, and not simply in symbolic ways. I mean, of course, symbols matter, and it's not just in our grief, although absolutely every day we are grieving, but we need sustained, strategic, and coordinated actions. I spoke briefly about the international solidarity movement. That is certainly one way that people can get on the ground and stand with Palestinians. And that is important, but what is even more important is what they do with that firsthand experience when they come back home, just like Thiago spoke about the flotillas when we're at sea. Of course, this direct action confrontation is important, but what's more important is how we translate that back home, how the millions of people that are supporting these flotillas take these actions back home and shut down their governments, pursue BDS actions, continue to educate, to push in all spaces and not only spaces that are comfortable. We have to go into these uncomfortable spaces and push. One of the ways, for example, that we're doing that in Michigan, it is by putting ourselves in the political parties that are so problematic, but pushing from the inside. And now, actually, this coming weekend, the Michigan Democratic Party leadership is going to consider resolutions that we put forth and that students put forth, actually calling for an arms embargo, complete arms embargo on Israel. And not just that, but that Michigan needs to divest from all forms of genocide, Israeli genocide and apartheid, by reviewing all of the ways that we deal with apartheid, genocidal Israel. Not sure if it's going to pass or fail, but there has been tremendous activity, even in these uncomfortable spaces and within the institutions that have failed us. So we need to continue doing that. I think I'll end with just saying my most important message is, Thiago talked about it, this call for a ceasefire, and even some symbolic actions that have been happening with these new countries, Canada, France, Australia, the UK, that have acknowledged Palestine as a way to try to quell the outrage in the streets, to try to make it seem like something is being done when these governments continue to undermine Palestinian rights. And the path to actually really peace, if that's what they want to see, is by ensuring Palestinian self-determination. But all of these other things that actually undermine international law is extremely dangerous. We need to recognize it for what it is, not accept the scraps that our governments are giving to us, and to continue to call on them to uphold their obligations, pushing them in every way that we can. Will there be another flotilla? Yes, there will be. We are actually meeting very soon. Thiago, I'll be seeing him soon with others, with comrades, to think and strategize about what our next action is. And the fact that that form of direct action has grown, but would be nothing without everything else that people are doing in their own communities and locally, always bringing it local. And to continue to push. So we look forward to, it's sad that we have to continue, but we do have to continue. And we look forward to working with all of these different organizations and movements. And I will recall, and I always say this, when I used to have all these internationals in Palestine, Palestinians themselves would really be very grateful to people who left the comfort of their own home to come, but give them a very important message and saying, thank you for being here. But your most important work is to go back home. So go please home and change the policies of your own government, which is enabling our ongoing oppression. And so that's what we need to continue to work on every single day. And nothing that Israel or the United States or all of these repressive governments that are trying to silence us, that are trying to shut us up, nothing they will do will silence us, because the world that they are trying to create is a very dangerous one. And we deserve better. And my kids that you saw coming home from school, they deserve better. So let's go on with that. Hopefully see you all in another classroom, in the streets, on a flotilla, until true justice is achieved for Palestine, but also for all of us.
Thank you so much, Huwaida. The last 5 minutes are going to go to Dr. Sui. I just want to make sure that you let us know schedules and so on, even if you let us know privately, so we can prepare, plan, open classrooms. So we would like, because we'd like the students to know, we'd like the youth to know, we'd like different people to know, and be exposed to kind of discussions, deep discussions, not just sloganeering, but really understand the history, complexities, and so, because it's really important to know what's going on. So Dr. Sui, I turn it to you now.
Okay, I'm very happy to go through my 200 slides, all my personal experience and so on, but that will take an hour, okay? But now to summarize, I think having heard all that, I think the decolonization of our own minds is the most important thing. The empowerment of the Palestinians are very important. Palestinians, I don't want to tell Palestinians, because they are the ones who teach us what to do, that, having their rights, having sovereignty is a basic right. It is not what to, depends on what Trump says, what Starmer says, Netanyahu says. It's an inalienable right of the Palestinian people, number one, okay? Number two, as friends, okay, we can, whatever we do must be in consultation with Palestinians. None of us have the right to dictate to the Palestinians what we think is good for them. I think that's the most important thing, because sometimes when organizations get big and powerful, we feel that we can do this for the Palestinians. No, I think the Palestinians decide. This is most important in NGO work, humanitarian organization. And then on a personal level, because I feel that, the first lesson I learned from the Palestinians, which they actually want me to do, they don't want anything from me. They always want to do something for me. But when I actually say that I'm leaving to testify before the Israeli Kahan Commission tomorrow, okay? And maybe I won't come back. What do you want me to do? There's always the first thing. Tell our story. The world has to see us as their equals, as their brothers and sisters. And we are not begging. Just tell the whole world what happened to us, what we really want, not your charity. We accept your solidarity. If it's given wholeheartedly, but not any charity. So I think it's the most important thing in telling the Palestinian story, okay? And sometimes activists like myself overstep. we go ahead and tell Palestinians what to do. And then if they love you enough, they tell you to stop it, okay? So always work in mind that the Palestinians are the people who will lead their own struggle, not us. And then BDS. It sounds so basic now, but I remember in 2004, I had big trouble because I supported the BDS and so on, but it has to be done. It's an inherent part of answering the call of the Palestinians living under occupation and also in exile to do this. So we have to do it. And then thirdly, remember the Palestinian people is not divisible. They can live under occupation, they can live in the refugee camps, they can live under Israeli apartheid inside the Green Line, they can live in the diaspora all over the world. But they are one people. And if we can see that, then you realize that sometimes, just now I was trying to Google about this International Day of Solidarity and so on, and there's so many write-ups on it. I would say 2/3 of them forgot that 50%, more than 50% of the Palestinians live in exile in the refugee camps, 58 refugee camps all over the Middle East and also in the diaspora. And these are part of the Palestinian body. And then fourthly, it is to sustain the Palestinians. We cannot forget that no matter how we see Palestinians as heroes, how much we admire them, they need support in terms of, livelihood and so on. So we have to be generous. We cannot call ourselves friends if we are not generous. I think that I can say honestly. They have been generous to us, to the people of the world. They don't need anything because Gaza has proved that they can fight and they can stand in solidarity. They can sustain themselves. They can take the blows and they lead the whole world. They're changing the whole world. So what have we got to give to them except to stand with them and say thank you?
Thank you so much, Dr. Sui. I am going to just thank all of you for such an amazing. I have to say, it's very enjoyable for me to engage in all this conversation, to learn and to think about what are the things I'm going to discuss with my students and what are they going to write in their reflections, in their exams, and discuss. I thank you so much for your generosity, for your love, for your support, for coming here and giving a lot of your heart. This would be really, it's very important conversation, both about the realistic aspects, the history, what's going on, and also the reminding ourselves that every single time Palestinians or any other people rise and defend themselves and so on, colonialist, powerful parties come in and come up with a new gig in order to throw it in their face to undermine. How many times have US and other powers proposed a ceasefire? And how many times Palestinians said fine? And how many times Israel has broke it again and again? And now with the flotilla rising so much, tribunals are rising. Everybody in the world, there's so many condemnation. ICJ, everything. Now they have to come up with something else to give the whole world to be busy around it and divert attention from what's really going on, the massive support from all of our real support from everybody around the world. I've never seen such qualitative shift in solidarity and support. It's like people who are fighting with the Palestinians in the same trenches, and it is the same fight. No matter how what tools people are using, the knowledge that people are giving, the analysis, it's very, very important period. And this is also that gives people the courage to continue despite the incredible sacrifices that shouldn't have happened from day one. They shouldn't. Not a child should have been killed. Nobody should have been. And there should have been a lesson, never again for anyone. Not just never again for anyone. Genocide should not be exceptionalized any injustice should not. It should be justice for all. And we are carving that. And I think Palestinian people are carving that. They are not treating those who are abusing them the same way, because we do want a different society. I have revolutionary optimism, and I think everyone here who's participating expresses that, exudes that spirit. So I really thank you. Thank you for coming here, for enriching our classes, for enriching everybody online. It's been a treasure to have this labor of love, and thank you for, it's been amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll ask you again. Yeah.
Rabab, ahlan wa sahlan.
An honor to be with you, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
I love you so much. Okay, take care.
Bye.
And we'll send you the comments.